Hello everyone, welcome to Album Countdown. Today we're going to look at our first Beatles album, specifically Abbey Road. But before we get into that, there's a couple things I need to talk about first. The first thing is in regards to future episodes. So, some British artists like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones have released albums with different track listings in the US and the UK. For example, one song that might be on the UK version might be missing from the US version. Or there could be an album that was released in the US and not the UK. That practice stopped in 1967, but I'm telling you about this because if I do certain albums by those guys, I'll be doing the US versions and not the UK versions. So, the other thing I need to talk about is rather personal. I hope you'll bear with me, people, because this is going to be a bit long. On June 30th, 2015, a man named Roy Robinson, who was the husband of my Aunt Lynn, passed away from brain cancer. And needless to say, that was a very sad day for my family. I was never particularly close with him, but I still felt bad for Lynn and their kids when I got the news. And I still feel bad for them even now. And for their grandkids, because they never got a chance to know him. But one thing I didn't know about him until last year was that he was an avid Beatles fan. And that's putting it lightly. The way I found out about this is I was going through Lynn's record collection. She had 2 boxes, and literally half of one of them was all Beatles records. That's when she told me how much of a Beatles fan he really was. In fact, he even had 2 copies each of the albums Rubber Soul and The Beatles, aka the White Album, as well as Blu-ray discs of their appearances on The Ed Sullivan Show in 1964 and 1965. At first I wanted to take them home with me so I could sell them because, let's be real, the Beatles are still very popular even more than 50 years after they broke up. And at that time, I did not think their music was that good. So I wanted to test them all on my record player to see if they were in good enough condition to sell. And the first album I tested was Abbey Road. So I wanted to test them all to see if they were in good enough condition for me to be able to sell, and the first album I tested was Abbey Road. But something unexpected happened. Hearing Abbey Road on vinyl changed my opinion of the Beatles drastically. I still don't think they're the greatest, but that was when I actually began to like the Beatles. So I decided to keep all of the records I brought home in my collection instead of selling them. So that's why Abbey Road is the first Beatles album I'm doing for my show. And in case you can't tell, this is the exact same copy that Roy had. It's definitely very aged, what with the faded color and the top left corner being ripped and all that. But this year is the 10th anniversary of his passing, so I think it's only fitting that I use his copy in a tribute episode to him. So Roy, if you're watching this, wherever you are, this one's for you. Okay, now that we have all that out of the way, let's talk about the album itself. This was the Beatles' 11th studio album, and based on when they started recording, it also ended up being their last. But it wasn't the last one to be released, as Let It Be would be released the following year. They also released the album Hey Jude in the US between those 2 albums, but I digress. The album was recorded in the months leading up to the band's breakup in April 1970, and it's quite possible they saved the best for last. The album received mixed reviews when it came out in 1969, but more contemporary critics regard it as one of the best albums ever made. In fact, just a couple of years ago, Rolling Stone ranked it at number 5 on their list of the 500 greatest albums, and Apple Music ranked it at number 3 on their list of the top 100 albums, making it the highest ranked Beatles album on both lists. The cover photo is instantly recognizable and one of the most iconic album covers ever. And you've probably seen it or an imitation of it somewhere, whether it's on a t-shirt or a poster or something. To date, the album has sold about 27 million copies worldwide and been certified 12 times platinum by the RIAA, making it one of 3 Beatles albums to be certified diamond, and no one had achieved that feat before or since. But how good are the songs on this album? Let's take a look. Number 17, Her Majesty. This is one that could be considered a hidden track because it wasn't listed on original copies back in 1969. Honestly, I think this one is fine for what it is, but I wish they had tried to make it longer, even if it would have only been about a minute or so. Number 16, Sun King. So, the second half of the album contains a medley of 8 songs. And honestly, they're difficult for me to talk about because there's just so little to talk about. But in any case, I'd say Sun King is the worst of those songs. The music is fine, but the second half of the lyrics are in a myriad of European languages, including Spanish, Portuguese, and Italian. Why? I don't get it. Plus, there was a real Sun King who supposedly provided the title of this song, but he was a king of France, and there's not even one French word in this song. Couldn't they have at least gotten that right? Number 15, Golden Slumbers. This is one of those songs where I can't figure out what it's about. I also have this one ranked lower because about midway through, Paul McCartney's voice sounds really harsh. And compared to the rest of the song, that is totally out of place. Number 14, Because. Again, no idea what this one is about, but I have this one above Golden Slumbers because the sound is consistent throughout. Number 13, Maxwell's Silver Hammer. Okay. So, some artists have songs that they recorded but don't look back on fondly for one reason or another. And for 3 of the 4 Beatles, Maxwell's Silver Hammer is one of those songs. The only member of the band who actually liked it was the man who wrote it, Paul McCartney. John Lennon actually refused to play on it, partly because he hated it and thought it was what he called Paul's granny music, and partly because he was still recovering from a car accident he was in a few weeks earlier. McCartney, on the other hand, apparently liked it so much he wanted it recorded a certain way, and according to interviews, they spent at least 3 days on that one song. George Harrison and Ringo Starr hated McCartney's specific demands and perfectionism, and it drove them mad. They've said it was the worst recording session they've ever had to do, and some have said that this contributed to the Beatles breaking up the following year. Now, as for the song itself, I think it's fine. It definitely did not need 3 days to record, but I don't think it's terrible. It's about a serial killer named Maxwell Edison who commits murders with a hammer, hence the title. The song has an upbeat tune, which seems paradoxical given the subject matter, but I think it helps because a downbeat tune would probably lead people to skip it, and I don't think the Beatles were capable of a metal-esque sound like you'd hear from Metallica, for example. And during the chorus, there was also the sound of an anvil, which I thought was actually a clever touch. Number 12, She Came In Through the Bathroom Window. This one was about a fan who apparently broke into Paul McCartney's house through his bathroom window, which explains the title. But beyond that, I have no idea what the lyrics are saying. But it does have a sort of fast-paced rock and roll sound that I like. Number 11, Polythene Pam. This one I have ranked higher than Bathroom Window for a couple of reasons. 1, I like the sound better on this track, and 2, I can actually understand what the lyrics are talking about. But beyond that, I don't really have much to say about this one. Number 10. Oh Darling. This one I could have put lower, but ultimately decided not to. And the main reason for that is because I felt like I could understand what the lyrics were saying. The message is quite simple. The narrator, in this case Paul McCartney, is begging his lover to stay with him and promising not to hurt them. That's all well and good, as is the sound. But it's McCartney's vocals that really drag this one down. There are a couple of spots where his vocals sound harsh and it's really affecting his voice, and it really does not work. Especially for a song like this one. Number 9. Carry That Weight. This song actually has all 4 members sharing lead vocals, which is pretty rare for any band in general. And this one is about life's trials and tribulations and how people need great persistence to get through them. Definitely a true statement. And I also read somewhere that one of the Beatles thought that this was a way of saying that no matter what they did after the Beatles, their history with the Beatles will always be with them. And I can believe that. Number 8. The End. This was supposed to be the last song on the album, but Paul McCartney did not like Her Majesty being part of the medley and wanted it removed. So tape operator John Kurlander cut it and later moved it to the end of the album. McCartney ended up liking and approving of the change, so that ended up being the final song instead of the end. Believe it or not, this song has the only drum solo by Ringo Starr in the entire Beatles catalog, which is surprising, but it's still a very good drum solo. And this one also has a harder rock sound thanks to some good guitar work and solos from the other 3. And it concludes with a fantastic guitar solo by George Harrison. I wish they had made this the last song because that would have been a fantastic way to end the album. Number 7. You Never Give Me Your Money. So this is the first of the 8 songs in the medley, and apparently it was a mishmash of 3 different songs. The first part is softer in sound and about Paul McCartney's belief that their business associates, especially Alan Klein, were ripping them off. The second part has a harder sound and is about his fantasy of escaping that insanity, or a potential look at his life after the Beatles. The third part is not very clear, and apparently it has many different interpretations. It continues the harder sound from the second part and slowly fades out over the course of a minute. But when you combine the whole song together, I think its message can be summed up in one word. Karma. Given McCartney's distrust in Alan Klein, he probably thinks that he'll have a bright future himself and that Klein will be punished when he's 6 feet under. Number 6. I Want You, She's So Heavy. So, if there was one song that I would say changed my opinion about the Beatles, it was this one. It has a harder rock sound than the rest of the album, which is more in line with my personal taste. There's not much to say in terms of the lyrics. John Lennon wrote them as a declaration of his love for his second wife Yoko Ono, and they basically repeat themselves several times. I actually thought of putting it lower for that reason, but after hearing it again, it reminded me of the first time I heard Abbey Road on vinyl, and that changed my mind. Number 5. Mean Mr. Mustard. Out of all the songs in the medley, I'd say this one is the best. I've heard John Lennon didn't like it because it wasn't up to his standards, but I actually do. Similar to Maxwell's Silver Hammer, this song has an upbeat tune, even though the subject matter is unpleasant. Really, my comments about this are more or less the same as for Maxwell's Silver Hammer, except for the anvil because there's no anvil on this one. And just a little side note, whenever I play Clue, I sometimes refer to Colonel Mustard as Mean Mr. Mustard because of this song. And if you know what Clue is, I think you'll understand why. Number 4. Something. Now we're really getting into the cream of the crop on this album. So out of all the songs on Abbey Road, all but 3 were credited to John Lennon and Paul McCartney. And this is one of the 2 songs on here that was credited to George Harrison. It's widely considered one of the greatest love songs ever, and understandably so. The lyrics talk about the nature of love, from one person's attraction to another, to the uncertainties of love. And the sound, believe it or not, actually kind of reminds me of Pink Floyd's Shine On You Crazy Diamond, even though that song wouldn't be released for another 6 years. And now we've reached the podium. Number 3, Octopus's Garden. This is the only song on Abbey Road credited to Ringo Starr, and I'd say it doesn't get enough love. The lyrics talk about the desire for peace and tranquility, away from the hardships that people have to put up with on a daily basis. Starr got the idea for this song when he heard about how octopuses collect things along the ocean floor and make little gardens out of them. That and the fact that he was looking to escape the mounting tension within the band at that time. Everything about this song does seem kind of childish, but there is a sort of playfulness within that childishness which I'd say gives this one its charm. Number 2, Here Comes the Sun. This is the other song on this album that's written by George Harrison, and it really is a testament to his talents that both of his songs on this album are constantly ranked among the Beatles' best, and in the top 5 on this list. During this time, Harrison was going through a rough period, both inside the band and out. So one day in spring 1969, he skipped a business meeting, went over to his friend Eric Clapton's house, picked up a guitar, and wrote this song. The tune is so simple, yet hypnotically beautiful, and it really makes you want to just go outside and take in the sunlight. The lyrics have an optimistic message about how things will get better soon, which is probably what Harrison was hoping for himself at that time. Harrison himself takes the lead vocal and plays the majority of the instruments on this track, including acoustic guitar, while Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr back him up on bass and drums. John Lennon, however, does not appear on this track at all, mainly because he was still recovering from the car accident I mentioned earlier. And finally, number 1, Come Together. This is probably the Beatles song I know best, mainly because I hear it on the radio more than any other Beatles song. Also, when I asked Lynn what Roy's favorite song on Abbey Road was, she gave me 3 possible answers: Come Together, Maxwell's Silver Hammer, and Octopus's Garden. But whatever the case, Come Together takes the top spot because it feels like we actually hear all 4 Beatles playing on this one. John Lennon has the lead vocal, and his voice is probably at its best here. Paul McCartney provides one of the most iconic bass lines in all of rock. George Harrison, while not as prominently featured, still has his moments to shine. And Ringo Starr's drumming, particularly his use of the cymbals, is featured throughout and ties everything together nicely. So they really did come together for this one. And that's it for Abbey Road. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if there's an album you want me to look at, let me know. And Roy, if you're watching this, wherever you are, rest in peace.